Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sam64, and welcome back to the RoboCast. I'm joined alongside
Steve the American Killjoy.
And World of Woodrow.
It isn't just the three of us this week. As normal, we do have a guest from, related to the episode, but we actually have another guest because we weren't sure if Jevon was going to be here or not, and I felt rude saying to him 5 minutes before starting, "Oh, don't worry, Jevon's here." So please welcome DavidofSmeg for the first time. How has it taken this long?
It's weird. You know, I've been floating around for the last year in between winning quizzes and that, and now I'm just suddenly here. So, yeah, nice to be here.
Well, the people who... Well, no one's seen the video behind you, but there are some very nice-looking new entries for LEGO Wars, which I think is...
There's a few
soon,
here, including insert robot at the top here that hasn't yet been accepted to BattleBots just yet, but fingers crossed.
We're all, crossing fingers and toes and everything else. And
All we can do.
Well, exactly. Yep. Exactly. And we have, as I said, been joined by a guest who is somewhat related to the episode in question this week. Introduce
Somewhat.
yourself.
No.
It's Tweedy. Tweedy, why are you here? Like, for those that don't know, why are you here?
Can I swear during this?
You can absolutely swear. There is an E on the podcast on Spotify. You can swear as much as you like.
Are we past a minute on YouTube? Is that why we're safe now?
Possibly.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, he's not monetized anyway, so whatever.
Exactly.
Alright, thank fuck. My bot got shit mixed.
For those that don't know, there was a lot of replays in this episode of IceWave fighting a certain black and gold robot called Vanquish, Tweedy, which obviously was yours.
Fortunately.
This was your first kind of solo run on a TV show, really, wasn't it? Talk us through what happened that time, because it was obviously it was a couple of years ago now, but from what you remember at the time, what went wrong?
It's probably easier to list what didn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
It went in the arena. I think that's about all I got from that.
We're talking about IceWave here. It's the IceWave bounty. How... Obviously, we saw what happened to your robot. Obviously, it wasn't the only robot that season that got split in half. Obviously, Huge did as well later on. How fearsome is IceWave? Because obviously, in this episode, we don't really get to see a full picture of that. With a bit of a spoiler for later on, but how deadly is this robot?
Honestly, I wasn't expecting it to hit as hard as it did. It punched clean through about 12 mil of Hardox on the front. Like, it hit the wedge and it punched the bent section, which is the thickest part.
Wow.
And obviously, the wedge came off, as did the left side of it, but...
It was very well held together, at least to itself.
It was not very well held together. You are a liar, sir.
I mean, the part that flew off with it was very well attached to the other part that also flew off.
I'll take it.
Okay. I'm trying to give you some credit here.
I don't even get the credit. I didn't do the welding on that. I'm well held.
Well, that's the main thing, right? You can claim that, right? There. Yeah, exactly. You can claim
it's held.
Well, obviously, we are here to discuss the IceWave Bounty Hunters episode, which starts off with P1 and Tracer.
Who wants to start first?
It's an interesting fight because I think it really shows both sides of sportsmanship, really good sportsmanship, and then awful sportsmanship.
Yeah.
Tracer has struggled this season, all season, with getting stuck on bits of it, whether it be turned upside down and not have a way of still driving upside down in 2020, or if it gets stuck on its side and not having a way to get down in 2020. It was an interesting design. This one obviously was meant to come about either this year or next. For competing, they had no intention of competing in the 2020 season until everything got pushed back. So, when they did get in, some corners were cut to get in on time and to have it all ready to go. And as a result, Tracer gets stuck a lot. And that's the case here. P1, however, continues to have its best season yet, I feel, to start with at least. Really,
driving wise, it was excellent in this fight until the wheel came off, but even then it was still very good.
Yeah, I think 3 wheels for P1, they do start to struggle. It's odd, isn't it, that the sort of shape of the robot really depends on how well you drive with how many wheels. I mean, the likes of Duck can drive well with one wheel. Kraken can drive nearly straight with one wheel.
Ribot with two.
And then you see P1 who sort of, struggles at first with three wheels, but they manage to get the hang of it. And I think it's just a case of, it's not something that you exactly test for. You build your robot with all of its components and then test drive it. You don't build it with three wheels and then give it a test drive just to see what happens if.
Well, I've heard stories of many builders that just unplug one of the motors and just see how the robot drives with three wheels or with two wheels to see if they'd even be able to get out of a situation. I've heard stories like that.
I mean, have you done anything like that before?
On purpose.
For testing.
Yeah, not on purpose.
just by force, I don't know, from maybe IceWave or something.
Oh, there it is.
You're a bitch, and I'd like to make you aware of that fact.
There it is. It started.
It's just a tally in the corner just throughout this episode, isn't there?
That's far too much editing for me to do. I haven't nearly got the patience to do that.
It's not a very audio-friendly thing.
No, it's not. Absolutely not. Keep count if you're listening on Spotify or other platforms are available. I will say, I think, throughout the fight, I think you've got to say that P1, yes, was in control. And obviously, they didn't use their weapon, which was highlighted, throughout. Yep. But I kind of get the impression that if you don't give P1 the win here, that's, it's kind of harsh because they had the fight won and they chose to carry the fight on. And I feel like if they don't get given the win, I mean, not that I'm saying that, the judges have just deliberately given it to P1 because of this, but
no. Yeah, it's a really tough decision. I wouldn't say tough decision, but it's what the right decision is, but there's a lot of reasons in the criteria where you could give it to the other robot poorly, but you still could, and that's the part that bothers me because it was split. And I knew it was going to be split because of the way that this match went. You have a robot that doesn't use their weapon for basically the entirety of the match, and then you have the other one that at least keeps its weapon facing. Maybe not always being the most aggressive. It did do damage. Then again, was P1 the one that took off Needle's wheel, or did it just fall off? I missed that, and I tried to watch it back.
Tracer actually took off their wheel.
Yeah, and Needle was pretty good. I must say that robot did do what it was supposed to do, lifting P1 off the ground. It's just that Tracer was also on top of P1 at the time, so they couldn't do anything about that and couldn't tee them up for that hit.
It is a really effective mini-bot. It's probably one of the most effective mini-bots that we've seen in a few years. Just in that it lifts in a very different way with the sort of, rotating lifters as opposed to just, sort of forklift style. It's got more torque to be able to lift, and it makes a lot of sense, and I can't think why people haven't done it in the past. Something like the timeline would have benefited from something like that from Chronos last season or something. I don't know, but
it's cool to see a mini bot that isn't just a wedge or just like a joke, like a pot on wheels or a narwhal. You know what I mean? It's cool to see something different.
You leave the narwhal alone.
That narwhal can be fed into spinners.
They are endangered
and nothing else.
We're getting.
They're going to go out extinct if we don't pay for some. On the
right.
I do need to buy a narwhal from them.
What else is there to add? I mean, obviously Tracer, as we've said, has struggled this season. Probably a result of the very rushed turnaround that they've kind of had to get it together quite quickly, ready for this season. Obviously, they were planning to enter the 2021 season. They brought that forward because they got the extra time that they needed because COVID delayed the tournament. Maybe better things to come in the future. I mean, there's actually videos going around at the moment of Tracer with a stream mech now.
Mm-hmm.
It was planned to have one. It just completed in time. That's the thing.
I think it's the thing with Tracer is every time that they found a new failure mode for it during the season, you saw it you will see it in the final bounty. Is it the final bounty? I can't remember where we see it.
It's in another one, yeah.
I think it's the penultimate one from memory.
Yeah. But they have welded things onto it to stop it from getting stuck in certain positions, and they've attached the top bits, which they had in this fight, because getting turned on their back and not being able to move is a bad one. But I think I've had discussions, I can't remember where these discussions went or who they went to, but we have discussed at some point perhaps there being somewhere in the rules that if you have the match won and you are going to get them down so that the match can continue for the sake of TV, then you might get either a buy-in in points or better earn more points for it, something like that. I don't know if it would work out, but the TV show have
because what happens if your robot therefore dies after the fact of you getting the other
this
robot
is
off
true.
the wall? That's the thing.
But if it dies, then you're out. Unlucky. But I feel you should get recognition for getting the fight to continue. I mean, BattleBots pushed an agenda last year of, longer fights, please, because the fights were ending way too quickly, and apparently all the builders were spoken to and said, look, these matches are for TV, they need to go on a bit longer.
Well, Tweedy, you can probably tell us more about that, because obviously you were there last year with Ragnarok as well. Oh, sorry, 2019.
And having probably the shortest fights there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of a splitting subject in that everyone wants to see better fights, but then also when you're there, you don't want to be giving up thousands of dollars for 3-4 seconds of extra fight.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Still competition at the end of the day.
Yeah.
there is that part of it.
And it's also a competition that's largely self-funded for a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there's that aspect for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, everyone wants to make good TV, but you also don't want to go bankrupt while doing it.
Very true. Very true. Fight number 2 sees Deadlift versus Ghost Raptor. I believe this is the first time we've finally seen Deadlift. Other than the little highlighted fight against Mammoth, this is the first time we've properly seen Deadlift in a fight, and it was excellent. It was so good.
It's incredible. It is. I almost prefer it to Gruff. It does what Gruff does, but I think better. Or at least it will.
Controversial,
do fully. I know, right? There's something about it that I don't know whether it's the placement of the flamethrower or the look of the machine, but I feel as though it's just a more rounded bot. I don't know. Who am I saying? What am I saying? Gruff. Gruff feels sort of quite grungy, and I think that's the aesthetic they're going for. Whereas Deadlift looks a lot more finished off.
It doesn't come from a lab, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's very nice. And an interesting fact about Deadlift is that to get onto Team Deadlift, you have to be able to deadlift the robot. That is criteria for the team.
I mean, I don't know, man, because I'm not that I'm want to talk. I'm a weedy guy by comparison, but some of them don't look that big. I don't think they can deadlift 250 pounds.
They are the most buff nerds you've ever seen.
They are.
That
really
is not
nerds.
true, Dan Hammer. I will fight you on that.
Deadlift was excellent. Throughout the whole fight here, they bullied Ghost Raptor for the entirety of the match, and then it just stops. And I was so sad. I've never been
such
more
a
disappointed.
strange failure. It's like it's like power cut and it slid forward slightly, and then that was it.
Remember when Tantrum lost to Valkyrie and it just stopped randomly?
Mm-hmm.
When it was in complete control of the fight, and it just was like, oh, that's it, I'm done now.
So perhaps battery failure.
Could possibly. I mean,
it's strange though, because I do see. I don't know if it's my eyes playing tricks on me, but I do see things in the drive pod area spinning. I don't really know.
That's I'm pretty sure those are the drive motors. They look like they're outrunners, so they've gotten single stage reduction to the wheels. They're supposed to.
So something went.
Yeah, it was a shame because obviously we commented way back when we first saw Ghost Raptor that we weren't particularly impressed with it looking wise. It performed a lot better than what I thought. Yeah, basically. And I think it's performed a lot better than it necessarily may have deserved to. I think in this fight it really struggled because, well, Deadlift was in complete control of the fight, as I said, but I do think that Ghost Raptor had flashes, maybe, of...
Sure.
Yeah, it was doing some stuff. I mean...
There was a nice
were hits
gash, wasn't there?
Yeah.
A nice little mark they took out the front, wasn't there?
Yeah. And they bent the whole frame, didn't they? On the lifting arm.
The whole arm frame. Yeah, it's that in one hit. In one hit from the replay that we actually got to see, you see it straight, and then the hit happens, and it's like covered, and then they move, and it's just busted. But it didn't really hamper Deadlift, honestly, because they kind of used their lifter more like a clamper after that, and just had the fire basically be their primary weapon. for the rest of the fight. And I really thought with all those Swiss cheese holes that something was going to get burnt.
Well, we've already
Ghost
seen
Raptor,
Ghost Raptor burst into two flames. So,
right, yeah.
So you're still trying to push the two flame agenda there.
I'm pushing it.
It's one flame, Jevon. You're not going to
I will have this bingo
No,
square.
you're not.
I will have it.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we do get to see more Deadlift later on in Bounty Hunters as well, and not to spoil too much, but it is phenomenal in that as well. Like when you see it, I think, is that next week? It is next week, isn't it?
I think it's a couple of weeks.
I thought it was the Tombstone Bounty.
There was such a big... Yes, it was the Tombstone Bounty. There was such a big gap in between this bounty and the next one.
Yeah.
I just lost all track of what bounties came when and who was in them.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. But it's a shame for Deadlift. They were in control of the fight, but Ghost Raptor was the one still running at the end, and they go through to the next round.
Falling backwards into victory a little bit. But hey,
they all count,
just
right?
got to go that way.
They all count, right? Now, Fight 3, we didn't really get to see.
What wasn't a fight, I guess.
So the fight was between...
it was worthy.
Well, it was between Hypershock and Sporkinok, which they decided to highlight, which...
I'm quite glad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping we do get to see it at some point just to see what happened, but like, by all accounts, it wasn't a great fight.
Hypershock barely worked because it was the end of the season and they'd already been...
what was their last fight was Hydra, so you got to get ready for your next fight.
Even before the Hydra fight, so I can't remember who I was speaking to, but apparently Hypershock very nearly didn't make it into the round of 32 because they were just not in any way functioning. So they managed to get it repaired and got into the 32 and then went out to Hydra, and I think rightly so because they were a bit cooked after this season. The bot itself had been struggling through anyway. And, this fight sort of proved it, that they were on the sort of trailing off end. Meanwhile, Sporkinok, it's their first season. They've done really well to get a robot into the arena. They've had a few fights with it. They will come back with something better, I'm sure, or stronger. What can you say?
Yeah, we can't really talk much about the fight because we didn't see it.
It's a shame with Sporkinok because I think they had plans for a different robot entirely, a different weapon system, and this is what they had to fall back onto. Did I hear a flywheel flipper? That was what they were planning. I think I read that somewhere. If that's what they were planning, or if that's what they're planning for the next one, that's a fantastic. But this
for this one or the next one, but there was a flywheel hammer thing thrown around.
Flywheel hammer, there you go, something like that. But it's a shame because, to be honest with you, this robot was kind of dead on arrival. And I hate to say that because I love the team, but it's the quick time to get this thing together, and it needed another month or two, maybe, I don't know, or more time than that. It just needed more time to be bashed around because it doesn't
fine tuning, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's hard to test these things outside the battle box. I get that, but it was a rough road for them. Great experience, honestly. I'd love to be on BattleBots, so good on them for that. But I look forward to what they have to bring in the future if they get accepted back again. There's
clearly another level to that machine, isn't there? And that team.
Yeah.
When we spoke to Will Bales, whatever that was, months ago, he kind of said the same thing. They turned up and it's a robot that doesn't come with a big reputation because it's a new team, and they didn't really get the chance to kind of show off what they could do. And I feel like it's kind of harsh to kind of judge a team's first entry in the competition when it obviously with such a tight turnaround as well. And I believe he said that for the most part it was just Lilith who was doing most of the work because it was her baby basically. So one of those things. But Hypershock going through, as you'd probably expect in a fight like this, but it's it wasn't a fight, was it? We didn't get to see it, and so we can't.
Yeah, at the very least for Sporkinok, they got a robot to last the whole 3 minutes.
Against a seasoned veteran as well.
The last two fights.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what you can ask for, really.
We probably talked more than the fight last week.
I know.
Yeah, that's more than the highlights already. I'm afraid.
This is very us, isn't it? We've dissect every fight as much as we can.
I mean, the only other thing I've got to say is the part where they're showing the spork getting ripped up. It looks like it's literally made out of plastic sporks for how easy that got ripped up.
Oh, the spork is made from like a bowl or something.
Oh, really? Oh, like a plastic bowl.
Yeah, and
That's brilliant.
it's got an actual like pick underneath it, but
Yes, you do see
the top
underneath
part's
it.
decorative.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
That's nice to know.
Yeah.
Make it as steel next time.
Well, that's funny because I think the ant weight that was actually the original version of this robot, really small guy. I believe it was an actual spork, a metal spork. If I recall correctly. So it's.
Let us know in the comments, people of the internet. You'll know. You always know. Fight 4, we did get to see. And it was Black Widow and Skorpios. Skorpios with its new flamethrower, like proper scorpion tail as well. Like we meant when we spoke to Zach and Diana, they basically said that the main weapon that they have, the hammer saw, was in the shop getting repaired, so they didn't have it to use. So they thought, well, let's use the other one. Let's use the flamethrower tail.
Let's go, Robot Wars Series 3.
I tell you what, this was a closer fight than it may have appeared because Black Widow got a good couple of pops off here and there. I think what really cost them was getting stuck under that pulverizer and the top getting caved in.
Mm.
Yeah.
Also, ineffectual use of the silly string dispenser. If they'd just got it at the right angle, they could have.
They should have fired it at the driver pod.
Fog of war, string of war.
Yeah.
Fire it straight at them. I mean, you can tell as well that I feel like the scorpion tail, the flamethrower tail that Skorpios had, clearly affected the robot's weight distribution as well, because Zach obviously normally he just drives it, hell for leather, goes straight at the opponent. He was very careful, and it didn't seem like he had the confidence just to chuck it around the arena and do its thing.
I think part of that is I don't have anything majorly awe-inspiring to add to it, but I think the thing about it is that this new weapon is quite experimental. They've used the hammer saw, they've used the cutting disc before.
They've used an angle grinder.
Yeah,
they did.
So they're used to driving it with some sort of spinning thing on top. They're not quite used to driving it as a grabber, almost, because I feel like that is what this one is. It's a control bot version of Skorpios, and you've seen in the past things like Behemoth when they've gone full grabber, that it's an experimental thing. You don't want to, have this thing on because for whatever reason. I mean, in this case, it was because they didn't have much else of an option, but you don't want to use it as an experiment and then see that experiment goes off in your face and you've lost the fight because you've used something experimental. So he was being, I think, a little more cagey with it so that he had full control of what he was doing.
Kind of a win-win them using the control setup as well, because obviously not to speak ill of Black Widow, but it was quite obviously an opponent that wasn't going to write them off, and they would have like a longer fight to dial it in and get used to it and see what it could do. But honestly, I was very impressed with Black Widow. Like it
did a lot better than what I think most people were expecting.
They did exactly what the whole fan building a bot thing is. Like, they were at the 2019 season and they were backstage and they came and asked us and showed us their designs and stuff, and they actually built it. It's great. And I'm pretty sure the back's a barbecue and it's wheelchair motors, but they ended up going to BattleBots. So
exactly, and that's obviously we haven't seen them in the main season as well. They're another team like Deadlift where they did get fights, but they weren't shown.
The last time we saw them was in a preview of what we got a preview of this fight.
Different program
in Expedition Unknown on Discovery, and we got to see the Mammoth Black Widow fight. But it was more of an exhibition in that Expedition Unknown episode. So hey,
yeah. But I mean, as I say, they also lasted 3 minutes against a BattleBots top 32 robot. Like
they had a full 3-minute fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't knock it really, David.
Yep.
It did remind me of like the classic JP line about Leebots by the end of it, just with how many holes it had on top.
Yeah.
A pepper pot.
Yeah. You could pour pepper out of that machine.
You really could. I mean, you could pour an awful lot out of it because the roof was caved in by the pulverizer, which is the most damage I've seen from a pulverizer in a very, very long time. But there wasn't much that Black Widow more could have done really, because it's Skorpios. It's an established top 32 serial winner at this point. You can't knock it. as much as you're losing to a good team, what more could they have done? There's not a lot, really.
To be fair, those pulverizers are hefty things.
They're £100, aren't they?
Yeah,
I'm not sure
now.
whether that's like the actual figure or not, but like they've got bigger since I've been there, and last time you could feel them hit the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty substantial stuff. Moving on to round 2, our first match is Ghost Raptor and Hypershock, and this is more like it from Hypershock. Much more like it. Jevon is a happy man.
He was very, very happy when he watched this one. Oh, yes.
I mean, Ghost Raptor, again, just didn't stand the chance. They were just outdriven, outgunned. I think, to be fair to them, they've since come out and said that, we bought a 2016 level robot to 2020 BattleBots, and they were showing up, basically. And then they've kind of said, look, the robot itself, we thought we'd improved enough, but they've been gone for so long, they hadn't realised how much the competition had evolved. And so it paid here. I mean, Hypershock literally drove rings around them. It was very nice to watch.
It wasn't without them doing damage to Hypershock, though. They ended up warping one of the weapon hubs on Hypershock with the single hit they got. So it will hit hard, but once.
But what a hit.
Yeah.
The literal glass cannon of this
If you
year.
can survive one, you'll do all right.
Well, they went full season 1, didn't they? They even broke their weapon in half.
Yeah.
On the first hit as well. Well,
Class.
yeah. Like, the second hit.
God damn it, Ghost Raptor.
It bothers me that robot can get stuck on its butt so easily and just can't get back over the series. The one he brought in 2016 had the same problem where it just kind of gets upside down and it just can't fully extend itself.
I mean, all he
over.
needs is like a bit of box section cut out and bent or whatever, just sticking
Just
out
borrow
the back.
a bit
so
of
he-
Yes.
Borrow some of the bike rack. That'd be fine.
Yeah.
No one wants to borrow the bike rack. Well, it was only $1. They could have done it.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
inklings of a cool design there. It's just I don't know where you go from here. Do you just throw this one in the bin and start over? Or
I hope so.
if you're Chuck, what do you do?
I hope so.
I only say this because Chuck has built some really nice looking robots
He's
over the years.
Been to so many semifinals, finals. His Team Raptor was everywhere
So ugly.
in the classic
It's so
BattleBots.
ugly. It bothers me so much.
It does
What
look
they
like a Mac
designed.
Pro.
Honestly,
Yeah.
like, he's built some. If you look at back in the day, Gamma Raptor, beautiful, sleek
Beautiful.
design.
Predator
And this-
Raptor. He could have
Yeah.
bought Predator Raptor.
Predator
Exactly.
Raptor,
Yeah.
Tripolta, even Carnage Raptor was a slack, but it was okay.
Season one's
something
Ghost
different.
Raptor looked fine. It
Yeah.
looked good.
Fine.
But since then, it's just like, Chuck, my guy, please. It doesn't look good. Like when we saw the CADs for Ghost Raptor, the new one, it looked way more sleek than this, and it just
It had suspension and it had red highlights.
He talked about technical stuff like that with the clutch and trying to have it so that like when it hits, it doesn't like have shock inside the kind of like similar to how the tank steering the little pinwheel Waiachi weapon that came with the build your own toys has like an overrunning clutch so that when it hits something it doesn't destroy the motor. But maybe I don't know. Maybe it was too much too soon for that machine. I don't know.
Hypershock going through to the final. Fairly easy run so far, but they've got a pretty of a interesting matchup next up, depending on who won out of P1 and Skorpios. Again, quite an interesting fight, this one.
This was a really good fight. I think this is one of my favourite fights of the episode.
And obviously it went to a split decision as well, didn't it? This one did. I want to say it did.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, it did do, yeah. Now, where do we stand on the ending? Because I think we were all fairly in agreement that Skorpios had the fight won. It was on top throughout the fight.
Yeah.
And then Skorpios, for the last 10 seconds, ends up on its back and can't self-right, and the fight ends with P1, the only robot working. Do you call the fight there? Like, do you call the fight as 3 minutes and then see if they can self-right? Because if they can't, then award, maybe in retrospect award a win to P1 because Skorpios was dead.
I don't think there was enough time to count them out. That's the
No.
thing. You need time in between the robot being incapacitated and then time to count.
I forget how much time it is. Is it
It was
20,
20
literally
seconds.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 10 to
there was
check.
not much left.
10 to check for the refs to say, I need to see some movement, and then 10 seconds to actually count out.
This kind of brings up the argument of letting judges either inspect the robots after or doing demonstrations of function.
That's what I was kind of referring to, like kind of a retrospective. If Skorpios couldn't self-right even after the bell, then maybe in retrospect hand it to P1 as a judge's win, because it's the only one still functioning at the end of the fight. It's kind of, it reminds me a little bit of the Beta Nightmare fight from back in season 2, where Nightmare's clearly won the fight throughout, and then right at the end is flipped over by Beta and is subsequently counted out, I think, just about in time.
Kind of the only argument against the whole let judges inspect the bots and everything is the logistics of it all.
Yeah.
Like, not only with COVID precautions, which obviously would make it more difficult this time, it's a time thing, because it costs multiple thousands per minute, I think, to film.
Mhm.
So it's like they're going to lose a decent chunk of the filming time that they've got to judges looking in there and demonstrating functions and everything. Like, ideally, like, the only way I could think around it is throw them in the test box after and then film out of order. So the fight ends.
Which is
demonstrate.
they've been, they're clearly okay to do that, because obviously we've spoken to multiple people this year who kind of said, they've, some of their fights weren't in the order that they were filmed in, basically.
Yeah, like, realistically, they could just throw them in the test boxes after, show them that it could have done it, given there was 5 more seconds, but they would then have to get everyone back in and move everyone up to
in the
film
time and
again.
logistics to get everybody back. Yeah, get everybody back.
It's just
There's no easy answer.
no.
And another wheel falling off of P1, which is
Yeah,
it's not even the same.
It wasn't
wheel.
the same wheel. Was it the same wheel? That was a different wheel.
It was a different front wheel, wasn't it?
I think it was the same one, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
Was it?
I thought it was,
I think
the other side.
I'm tempted to look back through the video just in case quickly.
The front left one was in the Skorpios fight. I may have it on in the background because I forgot to rewatch the episode.
Good job, Tweedy.
Don't patronise me.
As for the fight, I mean, as we said, Skorpios in control throughout. I did notice there was a comment by Chris and Kenny throughout the fight that P1 wasn't using its primary weapon. Yeah, because Skorpios wasn't on top. It just they didn't get the chance to get under fully and flip them, basically.
It's the tough thing about P1, because it requires it's the flippers. It's difficult, especially one where the flipper is basically right over the top of their robot. Like, a robot needs to be sitting directly on top of them for them to even have a chance at using their weapon.
Yeah,
you have to win the wedge war effectively for that.
Yep. And if
Which
they
we're struggling
don't,
to do
and
in this fight because of the wedge
and the
they
wedge
kept getting
lifts,
stuck.
And it has to have something on top long enough to actually get a lift going. Yeah, it's very niche.
Hey, Brandon, what LiDAR? Let's put that on top of P1, and then it'll just lift right then and there. Done.
The dream. It's a shame to see P1. This is its final fight of the season. It's a shame to see them kind of peter out like this, because I feel like, as you said, Jevon, this has been by a long stretch their best season in BattleBots, and I'm sure it will only get better.
I mean, you look back at what they brought to 2018 with Parallax.
I mean, we beat Parallax with the old live event robot. Come on.
But let's be honest, you also have beaten some high-end on the Elias circuit.
All right, okay.
Mingo is a force to be reckoned with. BattleBots, sign them up.
Yeah.
First. It has knockout potential.
I'll slip you the $5 in the post, yeah?
Thank you. But no, definitely, from Parallax to this version of P1, it is worlds apart, and they have done such amazing things with it. And
the drive power alone, I mean, is incredible now. Like, it is kind of... You don't really get the idea, because this season they've kind of struggled in the fights where they've been shown on TV. You don't get to see just how much drive power P1 has now. It is ridiculous. You do kind of see it in the fight against Smeg, but like, other than that, like, obviously we didn't see the Kronos fight, the Copperhead fight. You didn't really get to see it, and obviously in the other two fights they were on 3 wheels, so you didn't really get to see it at the peak of its powers, apart from against Smeg. So. Yeah.
The most we've seen out of this particular type of robot is probably with P12. Honestly, we've seen the potential of P1 in P12, and to be honest, I mean that the team, they obviously build winning robots. You got Star Child on the same team, so like they clearly know what they're doing. It just needs to all fall into place at the right time.
But Star Child is just
never
to win. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's cursed to get stuck in everything.
I mean, it won
every time it hits.
It won the featherweight competition, didn't it?
To be fair, yes, it did. It carried that team.
Yes, it did. That was nuts. I finally got done watching that. That was such a journey.
That was an interesting night last week. That
for those that haven't watched Norwalk Havoc, go and do it.
So funny.
I suppose we should move on to the final of the Bounty Hunter tournament, which is Hypershock and Skorpios. Now, obviously, again, another evolution throughout the competition. We saw the kind of ridged fork design of Skorpios against Witch Doctor, which worked, kind of. They didn't have enough distance between them and their weapon so that they couldn't, their weapon got damaged basically by Witch Doctor when they fought them. You see these massive, great, pointy, angled spikes. It's kind of like pointing at the sky. Literal devil horns, if you like.
Yeah,
and
basically. Literally.
It kept Hypershock at bay, and Hypershock could not touch them.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, really pleased that we get a rematch between these two robots. It was entertaining as all hell in 2018. It was entertaining this time around as well. I thought perhaps a little bit slower this time. But again, Hypershock.
They're both
coming to the end
8 fights deep now, aren't they?
Yeah. Both of their weapons were not at full tilt in this fight. They just weren't. And this was the point of the episode where you really start seeing Skorpios' disc just not building up the energy that it was. It would touch and go tink, and then it just wasn't getting that
bite,
that impact that it was getting earlier in the season.
Yeah, and as Zach and Dinah said a few weeks ago, that's because they're this far into the competition, as you said, Sam, 8 fights deep, and they've already had to rebuild this hammer saw setup once. So it's understandable that it's not going to be of its full potential just yet.
And at this point, they're on the prototype version of this robot. They're not even using the one that was in the tournament to begin with. So
crazy.
Yeah. So
I like this fight.
They survived.
It's kind of a demonstration of the bike rack style attachment, but still making for an interesting fight.
Take notes, Jake Hewitt. I'm kidding, of course. What were you going to say?
He's not. He's not joking.
Yeah.
Don't listen to his lies.
I mean, it would have been nice to see Hypershock win and have to fight one of the robots they actually sponsored for the season.
Yeah.
IceWave were sponsored by Hypershock. So that would have been cool to see. See whether Mark has to kind of tone it down because we may just cut money halfway through.
Well, one thing I did like was it was actually
sponsors control the media, Sparky.
Yeah.
You ever seen Speed Racers? There you go.
It was pre-fight actually when Hypershock walk out and they're like, "Oh, it's the IceWave team! Hi, go IceWave!" Just applauding. It was God bless Will Bales. Never change, Will.
Ever the showman.
Was this?
Of course.
Yes.
I can't remember now, but is this where what's his name? Team captain of IceWave.
Mark DeWitz.
Yeah,
Mark DeWitz, yeah.
Doesn't he join one of the teams as the hammer operator or something at one point? I can't remember what happened. I'm sure
something makes me think that Will joins him as the
that's
hammer
it.
operator.
I think, it's the other way around in the next fight.
It is the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, we had a kill saw sighting at the wrong time.
It was a very
What
early
happened?
kill saw.
This has happened a couple of times in
Yeah.
Bounty Hunters, hasn't it? Very strange.
It's very strange. I don't know what's going on with those kill saw
Maybe just kind of
sensors.
livened up the fight. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I know that, and we talked with someone about this a long time ago, where the rules for like game show related shows have changed to the point where the competitors have to have control of the hazards in the box, or they have to be fully autonomous. The screws, the saws, and the hammers they can use, but if they couldn't do what they did like in the classic era, where they had this one guy with a master panel of buttons and just being able to control the fights a little bit. They had to take that out entirely. But the kill saws, they're not kill saw slots. They're spots that get wedgelets stuck at this point. You don't see them.
Greg
I'd love for them to be
saying in the tail of the tape thing that he He didn't like the raising spikes that are now in the arena. He didn't like them to start.
He doesn't like the
now
whack-a-moles. Interesting.
He does now because it interferes with the wedge game.
Yes,
And,
this is true.
so they're going to keep him because A, they've only just got a new floor, leave it alone, and
Yes.
B, you know, it is something that you need to plan around, that the floor is not flat, and you know your
Yes.
A game of wedgelets is not going to hold up in there.
I just want to see more kill saws. I just want spectacle. That's all I want.
I
I
said
mean, we're
my
not going
fa-
to see robots fly across the arena like the lightweights used to, but at least we'll see.
Well, I mean, the best thing that I think, we're on a bit of a topic of kill saws here. The best thing I've ever seen from the kill saws, certainly in the reboot, was when Petunia grabbed hold of Rotator, swung it round, and ripped the wheel off. That was beautiful.
So good.
That was a
So
beautiful
good.
slow-mo, that.
Yeah, perfect.
That's the stuff you could have, you know?
Yeah.
We need more of that.
Maybe only have them after 1 minute instead of 2 minutes. That might be a way of getting around it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, Skorpios, was this another split decision? It might have been. I can't remember. There were quite a few, which I was surprised at.
No, this was unanimous, and I believe Will Bales also said rightly so that it was unanimous.
Fair enough. I
So,
couldn't remember that there was
yeah.
an episode I was watching where like every fight was a split decision. I think it might be next week's, which I'm getting a bit confused, a bit ahead of myself with.
Yeah, this is the weird part about seeing this. Where some of us, not all of us, have seen the Discovery Plus episodes.
Yeah.
But
Steve's been very good at watching them as they air, which is.
I've somehow avoided a lot of it. But to be honest with you, I mean, if you just watch some of the promotional material and just catch some stuff, you'll be spoiled. So be very careful.
Yes, be very aware as to what you watch. The bounty fight itself is a rematch from 2018, IceWave versus Skorpios. Before we get into the fight, obviously we'll come to you again, Tweedy, here. How intimidating is IceWave's noise? Because it was commented on, the fact that it is, the only robot in the field these days that uses an internal combustion engine. And for those that haven't seen IceWave fight before, because, there are those that are, going to enter this season having not seen it, IceWave before, how intimidating is that in the battle box?
Not even in the box. You can hear it in the test box, like from the other side of the pits. It's ridiculous. And those things, like, they insulate sound pretty well, but it's terrifying. It's pretty much that and Minotaur that you can hear from the other side of the pits. It's honestly ridiculous.
So loud.
Everybody went over to watch it. And the test box.
It's good stuff. It is good stuff. But as I say, it is a rematch. Unlike this last time, though, this was one-way traffic. I mean, as much as the last time these two fought, Skorpios dominated the fight, and in terms of control and aggression, and kept on top of IceWave throughout. It's the same here, but IceWave just does not get the big hits off. And I do wonder. We mentioned already that at this point, Skorpios is its 8th fight. This is IceWave's first. And I do wonder whether that could be an issue as well, because as much as Skorpios undoubtedly has got to be feeling some kind of fatigue and wear at this stage, IceWave is as yet to fight and is probably not as dialed in as maybe Skorpios was.
It's a brand new IceWave.
Exactly.
That's the thing. It's a brand new robot.
And they've made a pretty big departure from how the weapon runs. They built a custom engine for it this time, and it's not really something that you can test the rigors of combat on anywhere apart from in the box.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like to believe, because obviously, there is a bit in the fight where IceWave's exhaust gets pinned in by Skorpios' weapon. I would like to believe that was the whole thing that stopped IceWave working.
It choked itself out.
Exactly. It got fully, the exhaust was stopped spewing out its gas and it choked itself to death. I'd love that to be the case. I don't think it is.
It just starts internally vaping, and that's how.
Yeah.
Well, you do see a lot of smoke coming out of it, so maybe there's logic.
You wrote a very creative fiction here, Sam. We will see if it's true.
This is my.
That's your head canon.
Exactly.
This is also Skorpios' 4th horizontal spinner.
Yeah, nothing
season.
but the horizontals. Yeah. Maybe this is another factor to the whole IceWave struggling, is the fact that, Skorpios has fought almost nothing but the horizontals this year, as I've said many times in this podcast.
So they're taking on Valkyrie then in the first episode of 2021. And
no, you watch 2021, they'll face nothing but verts. Just to even it up.
Flippers. It takes on Hydra as the first fight.
I'd like to see it. I'd love to see it.
It'd be a good one. I think,
and even
this new version of IceWave, I'm not sure if I like the design yet. Obviously, it's gone from blue and orange to black and yellow. And,
My colours.
it's rather.
I was actually I was watching back the preview we did the other day, and I mentioned the fact that I said to you before, Tweedy, that IceWave hit you so hard that they stole your colours. I do apologise.
It's like
you
thing.
don't.
It just killed you
No,
off
you
and then
don't.
just became you in the process.
Yep.
To wear his skin.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, maybe. I mean, that was the last time we saw it. 2018. Obviously, we saw it in remars a little bit, but not very much.
This is another thing, actually. Now you mention it, I know that they fought Bite Force in remars, but let's be honest, it was still an utter clouting in that, and it was an utter clouting.
They Laffy Taffied their blade. It was terrible.
Has IceWave had its time?
Well, the last 3 fights has been Rotator, where it just pulled it apart piece by piece, and then obviously we mentioned Bite Force, and then this fight where Skorpios. I mean, when we spoke to Zach and Diana back in the main competition, they said that Mark was very generous to them and delayed quite a lot so that they could get the Skorpios fully ready and to give it a good fight, basically.
Yeah, Mark did the exact same thing when my lifter died before
Oh, really?
our fight. Yeah,
That's very kind of him.
Stand-up guy.
Fair play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fair enough. But as I said, in this fight, there was no point where I thought IceWave was a threat to Skorpios because it was just bullying it around the arena. Even the weapon, which we commented that Skorpios' weapon was really starting to struggle at this stage, the whole top part of IceWave, the engine, just started to fall apart and collapse in on itself. Maybe you're right. Maybe
Death by
IceWave,
1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah, literally. And maybe you're right. Maybe IceWave at this point maybe its time has come. I know we've mentioned in the past that Tombstone, that isn't the case, but Tombstone is still regularly getting into top 16s and beating.
Tombstone will be fine.
Yeah, exactly. But IceWave is maybe slightly different, and I do think with a bit more dialing in time, IceWave would be better.
I wonder if it's suffering similarly to Ghost Raptor, that they've had a year out and they've come back and the level of robot has
the field kept
on.
moving. Yep, maybe.
It's
entirely possible.
I would like to put it to you that IceWave can't have had its time because I need my fucking rematch. For the love of God, let me fight IceWave, Greg, you coward.
Well, let's.
So if you're hearing BattleBots,
Well, let's talk about this a little bit because obviously you have entered or applied to enter the 2021 BattleBot season.
Give you a fucking rematch.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the robot. Obviously, we've spoken enough about Vanquish. Let's talk a bit about
Vanquish, but not shit. Essentially, what I'm going for.
Let's talk about Vanguard then, shall we? What's coming with Vanguard?
Hopefully, fucking wins for a change. It's honestly the most time I've spent designing anything. It's probably the design I'm most proud of at any point in the last 10, 11 years of me doing this godforsaken hobby. I really, really want that IceWave fight, but I don't care who I have to fight to get there. Give me fucking Tombstone first if you want. I will fight anyone at this point. Just let me fight Mark.
Just to put a cap on everything, because obviously, we've joked obviously today about Vanquish getting pulled apart by IceWave. Part of you must kind of appreciate the fact that you are part of a BattleBots iconic moment, because it was, as I said, it was replayed so many times throughout this fight. It still gets talked about countlessly on social media. Surely that must have some kind of as much as it pains you because it's obviously your pride and joy.
Not so much anymore.
Yeah, of course. But part of it must kind of resonate with you and kind of think, do you know what? That's quite cool that I'm part of BattleBots history.
It's nice to see it replayed quite often, and it's a recognizable moment. But
you want to rate it?
Hopefully it's also a good reason for them to let me back in and let me fight them. Let me fight Mark. Great. Let me fight Mark. Please.
The story's already
let
written.
Me fight Mark.
Yeah. You won't even do it in the arena. It's just literally man on man fight.
I will fight this man. No, it's like the one fight I want. out of everything. I don't care if it's the first fight or the last
While
fight.
Tweedy's drawing his robot, he's like, "They better give me Mark. They
And-
better." Like,
It's in the submission, isn't it?
all this work.
Oh, it's in the submission.
I was joking.
Just
I
in
didn't think
all
it'd actually be a
capital
thing.
bold letters, Mark.
But I will preface it with, if it does get split in half again, you will witness the first emotional breakdown ever on BattleBots.
God bless you, Tweedy. God bless
I mean,
you.
we did kind of get one here in a way, kind of getting back to the final fight where they did touch on this a little bit in the episode where Zach and Diana's business wasn't doing too well when COVID hit.
Pop Bash, isn't it?
Yes, it's a huge part of their lives, and it's a huge part of what makes that team so great. It's a huge part of probably what won them the Founders Award this year. And when they win this fight, and you realize that they're going to get that payday a little bit, Diana just loses it. And I really felt for both her and Zach and the whole team, and it was nice to see that. It was nice to see the humanity sometimes. I like that, you know.
Their prize money will be invested into getting the next generation of young people into robot combat, into STEM education, and that is so incredible. It's something that's very close to my heart. I know that they've been asking online if people will support them to raise enough money to bring back the Bot Bash camps. These people are crowdfunding to get other people into the sport and
to push
pay
it
it forwards.
Pay it forward.
Like, there's no better team to get the Founders Award this season either. Like, they probably do the most in terms of outreach and, like, letting people know about the sport and getting people into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think their whole team this year was previous Bot Bash alumni.
Yeah, if not all, a good chunk of them, and it just goes to show how much they do for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was a nice way to end it.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to round things off. But before we go, a bit more plugging to do, David. Obviously, it's your turn. Obviously, Lego Wars. I do want to talk a little bit about Lego Wars because it is just the most fun to watch.
It has blown up surprisingly, considering
The official Lego page.
I know.
Yeah.
Like I look back on Series 1 and think, it's okay, but there's so much bad driving involved. Like any time somebody drives down the pit, it's
Anytime
just me.
It is you. It is.
Yeah, it is 100% me, and that is being practiced on Good Friday next week, because Saturday next week we are recording our next international special, which
Fantastic.
will involve all 4 of these robots behind, including
And
the one
this
in pink.
next to me as
And
well.
that one there as well, which I don't know how I'm going to beat. to be
Fancy.
honest, 'cause it's
You'll beat it by it not being
interesting.
very good at grabbing, David.
For those listening on Spotify, the 4 robots behind David are Two-Headed Death Flamingo, Skorpios, Hypershock, and P1. I'm excited. I'm excited to see.
If you don't already follow Lego Wars on
Yeah.
Facebook, on
Why aren't you doing
Instagram,
it? Come on.
everywhere,
just
do
various
it.
places. Just
And
watch the
subscribe
stuff,
to
think
David.
it's all right, and then check out later on in the year, because there's a lot more fun to come.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, with that said, that pretty much sums up the IceWave Bounty Hunters pod. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to our ramblings. And I have to say, Tweedy, thank you for being such a good sport and letting us abuse Vanquish just that little bit more.
As if you would have done it any less if I wasn't here.
we wouldn't have had anyone to poke fun at.
You would.
What we should have done is, between each fight, just remind everybody that Vanquish was split in half by IceWave, like the show did.
That's all us do. You may as well join in.
Dear me.
Anytime Anderson's on this podcast, anytime we ever talk about bots splitting in half, there's a very famous clip on the internet of the first fight that I ever had with an ant weight, and I've split in half. So I have to live that every single time. And every time we meet somebody new, have you seen this fight that Steve had? And it's like, all right, this is what I have to deal with.
Send us a link to it, Steve. I'll send it to all our guests in the future.
Awesome.
It'll be in the news, even though it's old news, you know.
In the bottom corner.
Dearie me. Anyway, with all that said and done, I have been Sam Elliott 64.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy.
I have been World of Woodrow.
I've been David fuck. I've been David
What, sorry?
Smeg.
Let me fight IceWave, Greg, you coward. Do it.
Yes, and Vanquish's Inner Turmoil has also joined us for this week. Thank you all very much for listening and watching if you have done. And See you next week for more, guys.